Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I've got another one from my secret stash of guitars. You guys that have been watching the show for a couple of years, you're probably like, oh man, have I gone back in time? I remember seeing these things get unboxed. But they just got, kind of stored away because some of these were like ones I didn't want to sell, and that was before I had a dedicated personal collection, but now I've been holding back some of the special examples. This is one I'm kind of on the fence about. I like it, but let's go ahead and show it to you guys. This is an early mid-2000s Gibson Les Paul Standard. Before the original collection came out, this was the one you bought. Nowadays, you have to decide, do you like the quirkiness of the early 2000s models, or do you prefer the more historic-like look of the brand new ones? You seriously can't go wrong. Even I have a hard time choosing which one I would choose if there was just one that I had to do. But ultimately, I think these will go up in value quicker because of a slight collector mentality of these older guitars. If you've ever seen a fake Gibson guitar, they're based off of these standards. They usually have a early 2000s serial number. This particular one is from 2005, and what makes it special is this silly back. Generally, mahogany does not have extreme flamed figuring like this. It's absolutely insane. I love this example. Because you even see the flame figuring along the sides of this thing. This is not what most mahogany looks like, but you can find some select very nice examples with quilted and or flamed mahogany. And what's even better is the neck actually has some pretty decent flamed figuring on this example too. So people talk about the Goodwood era all the time. What exactly is the Goodwood era? Honestly, that's just a made-up term. For me personally, I think the early 90s classifies as Goodwood, but you have to remember, historically, that is when Gibson was just being rebirthed in general. So they were getting higher quality woods. You no longer had a bunch of multiple piece tops. They were starting to transition out of that. But a lot of guys, they'll say, from 1990 till about 2005. For me personally, Goodwood means 1991 to about 96. And then I think we should just call this the Killer Wood era. That early 2000s, like 2001 to 2006, early 2006. These are my favorite standards if you're looking for something a little bit older outside of the original collection. So why is it that people would gravitate towards these besides beautiful woods? Because generally, if you do find one that's heavily figured like this, they weigh a ton. I kid you not, this thing is about 12 pounds. We'll see that on the workbench. But what made these special is these were the standards that just had the 9-hole weight relief. They weren't chambered yet. Chambering started in late 2006 for the 2007 model. Because you got to remember, back in the day, Gibson guitars were like cars. The new year model came out at the end of the previous year. So it's late 2006 when they transitioned to 2007 spec. They start chambering them out. People didn't like them as much. Then they switched to that modern weight relief with the V shape in them. I'm not saying those guitars are bad, but they're just not traditional. And Les Paul enthusiasts were typically traditionalists. So that's why these early 2000s ones are my absolute favorites if I had to choose an older one. So this is one example I'm going to share with you in a couple of days. I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks. I also have a quilty back one, and I just bought one from Japan that was a limited edition that had a back similar to this. So I bought this a couple of years ago. I mean, despite the condition being all kind of chewed up on the front, you've got quite a few dings on the top. I mean, it was a nice top, but it's the back that sold me on this one. Like, I've never seen a back nicer than this. It's just one of those ones, I can't bring myself to sell it. Like, if someone wants to pay me silly money for it, okay, I'll let it go. But as of right now, I think I just consider this one part of my personal collection. So this is just to show you guys a beautiful example of what I consider one of the best era of Les Paul standards. So to learn more about this particular example, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench, take an individual look at its parts and specs, and then get to that playing demo. People like to nickname bursts. I think I just need to nickname this one The Smile, because I forgot how much I love the look of this thing. It's all on the back. Like, don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic flame top, but every time I look at the back, I can't help but smile.
But let's go ahead and figure out what's on the inside of these initial Golden Era USA Les Paul standards. So, our pickups in this particular year are Burstbucker number 1 and Burstbucker number 2. You can identify them easily because they have these little stickers. Number 1, Alnico 5 magnets wound by PS. Same thing on the bridge pickup, but wound by TH. Maybe one day we'll know who those people are. But inside our cavities, we have the short neck tenons. And you guys remember in that Snakepit episode, I was telling you, you would have these little circles in this thing. Those are the router drill bits or something as they go down to route that area out, and then they route the rest. So that is just a remnant of that. And in this era, they will tell you what model it is in here in pencil and what color. This one looks like HS for Heritage Sunburst. Something like that would be my best guess. And then we have LP5+. Sometimes people think the 5 is an S, so it's Les Paul Standard Plus, but no, that signifies what kind of neck you have. Because if somebody took your sticker off, you're not going to know what kind of neck you have just by looking at it. Now, feeling it, generally you can tell. But if you want to know how to accurately describe your guitar and you're not sure, because sometimes these necks kind of feel in-betweenish. This is one actually is pretty big. You can just look there. Because the 60 style ones will have a 6 and doesn't look like an S at all. But this is a plus top for very obvious reasons. A nice pinstripey flame. But you can see the maple top right here, 2 pieces, joins onto that mahogany body. Again, this is the era where they had 9-hole weight relief. So that's something that technically the 50s and 60s USA standards today from the original collection have over these, is they are complete solid bodies. But generally, nobody cares about 9-hole weight relief. It's okay in most people's books. So here we have a Nashville style bridge. That'll be another difference. The newer ones actually have the faux BR1 bridge. They have the ABR1 on top that sits on like Nashville style studs. So they're about the same. It's just these have the straight up Nashville bridge on them from the factory. PW, Advanced Plating Incorporated branding. So made by the exact same guys, yeah. And then we've got the full weight tailpiece here with the casting mark all along it. But have you guys noticed something? This shipped from the factory without a pickguard. I would like to see Gibson start to offer that. I mean, the reason they didn't is because some guys, they want the pickguard and they don't know how to install it, or they install it crooked and they mess the entire guitar up. But in this era, a lot of them, they would just include the pickguard in the case and let you install it if you wanted to. Generally, I'm a pickguard on kind of guy though, but I think this would look good either way. No hole, so that makes some guys happy. As far as our electronics here, you've got your Golden Bell style knobs. You got 2 volumes, 2 tones, nothing too fancy there. Getting 8.04 in our bridge position. Neck position 7.58. Middle position 3.9. So a little bit hotter than a regular PAF style. But looking over the condition here, you definitely got some nicks and dings on the top. There's a couple of deeper scratches in that area. Small ding there. A couple of dings in our cutaway, but you know, after polishing it, it came to life. Like, if you guys thought it was good when I unboxed it, I mean, it's way better now. That Virtuoso polish does a great job on these. But you've got that vertical wood grain cross-hatched with the super flame. I always love tops like that. It makes them so 3D. Looks like one of our knobs has some internal cracking. I mean, that's pretty common. But by far the worst ding on this guitar would be covered over by a pickguard if you wanted to install it. But right there. That's why we have pick guards on guitars, so that doesn't happen. But anyways, moving on from our maple top mahogany body, we've got a mahogany neck that's 50s in style with a rosewood fretboard. 22 medium jumbo frets. You've got your acrylic inlays that are trapezoid shaped. And you've got your side markers as you normally do on guitars. This one doesn't have too much fret wear. I mean, you kind of see it in the cowboy chord area, especially on the 3rd fret. But nothing that needs addressed right now, in my opinion. The nut measures 1.69 inches and increases to 2.07 by the 12th. First fret neck depth on this 50s neck is 0.86 and 0.99 by the 12th. I mean, it's not as big as an R7 or an R8 with a big baseball bat neck, but this is the first 50s neck from Gibson in this era that I was pretty confident that it was a 50s neck. Like, it's got a good roundedness to it. We'll check that out on the contour gauge here. Here's a look at the neck at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Nice and rounded, but not overly beefy. Moving on to the face of the headstock, our truss rod looks like this. Peculiarly enough, instead of the normal brass truss rod nut, this one almost looks silver. but it is the correct style and our rod looks like it's in good shape. And besides the sticker, there's nothing too special about the truss rod cover on these. Here's something that's nice that, honestly, I've never realized until today. The reason these look so good to me is they use the vintage style bushing Clusen tuners, whereas most modern day Gibsons, they have the kind that screws on and has the large washer. This takes up less room, so it looks closer to a 50s Les Paul, which also means if somebody's ever put Grovers on here, after the fact, that means they had to ream the headstock out for those, so it's an irreversible modification. But now that we've got it all strung back up, let's go ahead and flip it over to the back side. The best side for this thing. Oh, it never gets old. It never ceases to amaze me whenever I take this thing out, especially that side profile view. Because it's one thing to find one of these that has this type of figuring, you can find that too, but not all of them have as much movement to them. So this thing's been rewired. I mean, the only thing that's different here as compared to stock original are the pots. This looks like a Burns system. I've never actually said that out loud before. It's like Bournes. That's a very common modification. Looks like our capacitors have been changed out, but they still use the original Gibson base plate down here. We still have our original plastic jack plate. You can see it's kind of cracked in that one spot. Looks like somebody added a felt washer to our strap button to secure the fit a bit more, but the top is just right. That's what the inside of the toggle switch cavity looks like. And these things do indeed have the thin binding in the cutaway, so that's a 50s throwback right there. Yeah, we'll just kind of go along the edge here. I mean, when have you ever seen this on a Les Paul? I think the only other one I had that had like flamed sides on top of it all, it was one of my Les Paul Elegants, I believe, or an Elegant that I had saw. I mean, the Les Pauls have it because they put maple binding on the side, but this is just a fantastic slab of mahogany back here. That's the other thing you're going to notice. This is a one-piece back. Sometimes you can find one piece, other times you find multiple piece, like two pieces in this era. But going from our body, we've got our neck. Again, this also has flamed figuring. Unfortunately, all these reflections make it really hard to see, but that's really nice for mahogany. But unfortunately, when I was cleaning this guitar, I found something I never knew about this before. You see right here, it looks like this experienced trauma at one point in time, and you've got like a small, it's either a ding impression or this thing got hit, and instead of like a full break, it just kind of cracked the finish a little bit. Thankfully, it's a transparent finish. You can see that there's nothing wrong with the wood itself, but the finish has been cracked a little bit right here. So you can kind of feel that if you run your nail along it. So that was a bit of a bummer, but honestly, I really don't think I could sell this unless somebody offers me like $8,000. Then it'd be like, all right, there's some other guitars I'd buy for that kind of money. But this is a 2005 example, 153rd day of the year, 330th in production for that particular day, made in USA. And you can see our double line, single ring Clusen style tuners back here. Under Blacklight, everything's looking pretty good here on the top. Face of the headstock has the glow I'd like to see. It looks like somebody might have kept a clip-on tuner on the side right there, and that kind of rubs some of the finish. Looking back here, this looks to me like somebody might have put some shielding paint in here. That's why that's glowing kind of strange. And as you go around here, you can see a sweat absorption area. You also see that on the edge. Going up the back side of the neck, everything looks about the way I'd expect to see, and you can see those finish break areas right there a little bit more clearly. And you can just barely make out the other side of where that clip-on tuner would be on it. I kind of got curious what was glowing there, so it just seems to be something on the right outside surface. I don't think that was added. I'll have to check that out when we do the quilty back one to see if that's just a characteristic of these mid-2000s ones. Otherwise, something's up with that. But now, the moment of truth. I told you guys this thing was 12 pounds. Let's see. I think it's 11 and a half if I remember. Yeah, 11 pounds, 1.4 ounces. Trust me, they're not all that heavy. That's because of this mahogany back. Generally, they'll be between about 9.5 to 10 pounds, very similar to the ones made yet today. So let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds.
like that neck pickup on here, nice and meaty. Where's the bridge? Very spanky. Definitely prefer that neck pickup though for kind of leads on clean. Then that middle position, as you were hearing, kind of chimey. Very cool. Now just kick on some distortion. Overall, I think the neck pickup just overall steals the show, both clean and dirty. Now that we know all about this 2005 Les Paul Standard with an obnoxiously flamed top and back, what are my final thoughts on these things? I already told you how I felt about these at the beginning. They are the golden era Les Paul Standards from Gibson USA. Now I do want to clarify a bit more on that because Gibson USA means a Nashville-built non-custom shop guitar. So that means they're 70s, 80s, 90s before this. What's wrong with 70s Les Paul Standards? Well, they have the maple necks, and I've just always preferred a custom from that era. Those guys also have the big boat paddle-like headstock, so if you think standard 50s and you want the smaller headstock, that would be a reason why you might not want that. But those are good guitars too, just not my favorite. Again, I'd rather buy a 70s custom. Now in the 80s, when you get to that prehistoric era, standards are really good then too, but they're a little bit too expensive for the average guy, especially the real prehistorics, the one that have the ABR1 bridges. I mean, those are great, but they're more so collectible and very expensive. Now, when you move into the 90s, that's when you get the early Goodwood era guitars. Those are also nice, but for me, it's all about that little carved out niche section from like 2000 to maybe 2006-ish that you can find these monsters. Like, what other era do you find wood like this on a Les Paul Standard? You certainly don't find it made yet today. It's hard to choose, it really is. But for me, I always suggest people either check out a brand new one or one from the very early 2000s. So troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this one with me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.
As always, if you're interested in being the next owner of one of these demo guitars, you can check them out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. There's some links in the description.